formulas. In this section, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using formulas to solve problems and just to basically manipulate formulas using the processes that we learned in the previous section. Formulas are rules that we state in symbolic form, usually as equations. For example, you have the distance formula. Distance equals rate times time, so D equals RT. And a couple of things that we can do with these formulas, taking this one for example, we can solve this equation for R, or we can solve this equation for T, or I can give you numeric values for 2 of the 3 variables, and then you can solve for the third variable. So that's what we're going to be doing in this section. If you're given numerical values for all the variables but one, just evaluate the formula and solve. In this example, we're going to use the interest formula. I equals PRT. I stands for interest, P is your principal, R is your rate, and T is your time. For the rate, just so that it's easier to use in the calculator, what I like to do is I like to change my decimal to a percent, so we know that the decimal in the whole number of 8 is right here. Percent is out of 100, so we're going to move this decimal a tenth and a hundredth, so it's going to be 0.08, and that's what I'm going to use in my formula. So we are solving this formula for I, so we're looking for how much interest. If I take $300 to the bank and I invest it for 5 years at a rate of 8%, how much interest will this investment bring? So if we start off with the formula, I equals PRT, and I substitute in the numeric values for the variables. I'm going to have 300, and all of this is multiplication. That's P times R times T. So you have 300 times 0.08 times 5. And so now I am going to use the calculator to figure out what this is. So we have 300 times 0.08 times 5. And so we're going to have 120, and we are talking about money, so that's Okay, so here's another one. Joe invested $3,500 at a simple interest rate of 2%. If he leaves the money in the account for 15 years, how much interest will the money earn? So again, with these problems, you may want to read them a couple of times and definitely make sure you know what you're looking for. We're looking for interest. How much interest will the money earn? So we are going to use the interest formula again. I equals PRT. So we're looking for interest. The principal that he's going to invest is $3,500. Your rate is going to be 0.02% or 0.02, and your time is going to be 15 years. So again, if I use the calculator, we'll have 3,500 times 0.02 times 15 is going to be $1,050. And that amount does make sense since we're only investing 2% or at a 2% rate. Alright, the next one we have is called an accumulation problem. Sometimes you may need to isolate the variable and then evaluate, or you can evaluate and then isolate. That's completely and totally your choice. So in this formula, accumulation is going to be your principal plus your interest. So that's your accumulation. That's how much you're going to bring home total. So for this one, we want to know the rate. So it says solve your accumulation formula for R, your rate, given that your accumulation is $516. So that's how much you're going to bring home. Your principal that you initially invested is $300, and you invested it for 8 years. So we have our formula. A is equal to P plus PRT. Now, if you want to go ahead and solve this formula for R, you can, but I prefer to plug in some numbers because that's what we're used to doing. So my accumulation, what I'm going to bring home is $516. My principal is $300 plus my interest. And remember, to find the interest, you're going to have 300 times your rate, which is what we're looking for, times your time, which is chapter 2. We need to get r by itself. So let's simplify first. We're going to have 516 is equal to 300 plus 300 times r times 8 is 2400 r. So we need to solve this equation for r. So we'll minus 300 from both sides. And so if we do 516 minus 300, we're going to have $216 is equal to 2400 r. Now we're going to divide both sides by 2400, and we're going to get r is equal to 0.09, and of course rate needs to be as a percent, so that's going to be 9%. The next thing we're going to do is take these formulas, and I'm not going to give you a value. So sometimes you'll be asked to solve a formula for a specified variable in terms of other variables. In other words, no values are going to be given for any of the variables. So this problem, for example, you have the area of a triangle, and so you have area is equal to 1/2 base times height. And I want to solve for the height, the h. So in other words, I want to take this equation and I want to get h by itself. So to do that, like we did previously, I want to get rid of that fraction first. So I'm going to multiply everything in the equation by 2. So we're going to have 2a is equal to, and if I multiply 2 times 1/2 bh, the 2 and the 1/2 cancel out to 1, and I'm just left with bh. So again, you have 2 times 1/2 bh. The 2 cancels out with the 1/2, and you're just left with bh. Now I need to get h by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by b, because that says b times h. And so we're going to get 2a over b is equal to h. So we did what we were asked to do. We solved the formula for h. Alright, let's try these two. The one on the top is our area for a trapezoid, and we want to get base 2 by itself. So again, I want to get rid of that fraction first. So I'm going to multiply everything by 2. So we'll have 2a is equal to, when I multiply 2 times 1/2, it goes to 1, so I have h times b1 plus b2. Now, I need those parentheses to go away, and the way I'm going to get rid of those parentheses is normally we would distribute, but instead of distributing, what I want to do is I want to divide both sides by h. So we're basically going backwards. So we have 2a over h is equal to b1 plus b2, and now the parentheses are gone. So to get b2 by itself, I need to get rid of b1, so I'm going to minus b1 from both sides. And so we have b sub 2 is equal to 2a over h minus b sub 1. So when you're doing these formulas, basically you're just going to write down what you see, because you can't really combine anything. Just make sure you keep everything in the same order that you see it. Okay, so for the next problem, you have an equation. It's a linear equation in standard form, and we'll talk more about this in chapter 7, so you do need to remember how to do this. So right now this equation is in standard form, and what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate it to where we get slope-intercept form. In other words, we're going to solve this equation for y. So we'll minus 2x from both sides. So I have a negative 3y is equal to negative 2x minus 1. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by negative 3. And so I have y is equal to, a negative divided by a negative is positive, so that's going to turn into 2/3 x. Again, a negative divided by a negative is a positive 1/3, and so we got y. Alright, the next problem we have is solve for d in the formula p is equal to s minus s dt. So to do this, we need to get d by itself. Let's get rid of addition and subtraction first. So let's minus this s from both sides first. to simplify the problem just a little bit. So we have P minus S is equal to negative S dt. Now, on the right hand side, I have straight multiplication, and I need to get d by itself. So the opposite of multiplication is division, and I'm going to divide by exactly what I need to get rid of. So I need to get rid of that negative sign, I need to get rid of the s, and I need to get rid of the t. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative st. So on the left hand side, I have p minus s over negative st is equal to negative divided by negative is positive. That goes away. The s's go away, the t's go away, and I'm left with just d. Now, you may want to cancel out the s and the s, but you cannot because the p minus s is a group. So this is your answer. One thing about these formulas is this. If you start with something, you should finish with the exact same things. So example, we started with a P, we have a P here. We started with two S's, we have two S's in our answer. We have a D here, so there's a D here, there's a T here, and there's a T here. So just remember, if you start with something, you should finish with it. Alright, so let's try some applied problems. Suppose that the length of a certain rectangle is 2 meters less than 4 times its width. The perimeter of the rectangle is 56 meters. Find the length and the width of the rectangle. So let's draw this rectangle and see if we can pick this problem apart. I know that the perimeter for this rectangle is 56 meters. It says that the length of a certain rectangle is 2 meters less than 4 times its width. So we don't know anything about the width, so we'll let that be x. But we know that the length is 2 meters less than 4 times the width, so 4x minus 2. Now, for perimeter, if you remember, perimeter of a rectangle is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So we know that our perimeter is 56. 2 times the length is going to be 4x minus 2 plus 2 times the width, which is just x. So I guess we need to solve for x because the formula or the question says find the length and the width of the rectangle. So let's figure out what x is going to be. Let's distribute. And then we'll combine like terms. And now we'll solve for x. So let's add 4 to both sides. So we'll have 60 is equal to 10x. Divide both sides by 10, and we'll get x is equal to 6. So to find the length, we're going to say 4x minus 2, but we're going to plug in 6. And then we're going to find the width, and the width is just x. And so the length is 22, and the width is 6. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to complete these problems on pages 86 and